That was a great workout. Oh, hey everyone, it's Justin again. I'm here at the gym and I've been wondering how much time people in this town spend exercising each week. That'd be interesting to learn about. I could ask, how much time do people in this town spend exercising each week to stay in shape? Based on what we've learned, is this a statistical question? Data needs to be collected to answer this question, and there's more than one possible answer. This is a statistical question. Will the data collected be qualitative or quantitative? The data will be measured in time, like 0.5 hours or 4 hours. So this is quantitative data since it's measured in numbers. But before I even start surveying people, I need to make sure I'm doing it accurately and effectively. Let's get into it. In statistics, when we collect data, we have to identify the population first. A population is the entire group that's being studied or observed. While a population often consists of people, a population can be groups of flowers, wolves, coffee shops, just about anything that we can collect data on. My statistical question is, how much time do people in this town spend exercising each week to stay in shape? What's the population here? Yes, my population is all the people in this town because that's the entire group that's being studied. My town has over 300 people. Why might that be a problem for me? Right, there are too many people here to collect data for. It'd be inefficient to survey every single person in a big area, especially in cities where populations can go up to the millions. It's a good thing that mathematicians realize that they can collect data from a representative sample instead. A representative sample is a small group of the population that accurately reflects the characteristics of that population. One important characteristic of my population is age. In this town, 15% of the people are elderly, 15% are teenagers, 10% are children, and 60% are adults. A representative sample should also be small enough that it's practical, but large enough that it accurately reflects the diversity of the population. With these things in mind, how many people should be in my representative sample, and what percentage of each age group should my representative sample have? Jot down your ideas in your guided notes. If you wrote a number between 30 to 60 people in the representative sample for this town, great work. That number of people is both practical and inclusive. If 60% of this town's population are adults, then what should be true about my representative sample? 60% of my sample should be adults too. The percentages for each age group of my representative sample must also match those of the population. Remember, I want to make sure that my sample accurately reflects the population. That being said, the first criteria of a representative sample is that its size and proportions reflect the diversity of the population. Let's say I only survey the people at the gym behind me. What do you predict would happen in the data I collect? People in the gym right now are more likely to spend more time on physical activity per week. Would this data accurately represent everyone in the town? Not everyone goes to the gym, so only surveying people in the gym would lead to data that inaccurately represents the population. This is known as bias. When collecting data, we have to be careful of bias. Which of these are examples of bias for my statistical question? Surveying only customers at a store that sells running shoes, surveying only residents of a retirement community, and surveying random people at a mall. If you're stuck, ask yourself, will this lead to data that inaccurately represents the population? Pause now to answer that question. Would surveying only customers at a store that sells running shoes lead to data that inaccurately represents the population? Customers at this store likely spend a lot of time exercising, so this data will lead to an overestimation of the town's typical exercise time and excludes anyone who doesn't shop at this store. This is an example of bias. How about surveying only residents of a retirement community? Will this lead to data that inaccurately represents the population? People in retirement communities are in their 60s or older, so only surveying them ignores everyone younger than them, resulting in data that inaccurately represents the population. This is also an example of bias. How about surveying random people at a mall? Will this lead to data that inaccurately represents the population? The mall attracts a mix of individuals of different backgrounds, and randomly surveying people ensures that I'm not choosing one group over another. So this is not an example of bias. Randomly selecting people to survey ensures that we reduce bias, while choosing the right location ensures that I can capture diverse perspectives in my data. Perspective is the way someone thinks about something based on their own experiences. In statistics, the perspective of the person collecting the data is also important because my perspective may cause bias in my approach. When I was writing my question, my perspective on exercise was that it means going to the gym for workouts with the purpose of staying in shape. Do you think the word exercise means the same thing to everyone in my town? I'm realizing how my perspective created bias in my statistical question. Exercise means different things to different people, so I need some more neutral wording in my question. What can we replace exercising with? I think physical activity is more broad and encompasses things like jogging, household chores, or sports. I'm also realizing that not everyone's purpose for doing physical activity is to stay in shape. Others might do it to improve mental health, live a healthy lifestyle, or simply just for fun. So let's remove that from my question. Okay, my revised question is, how much time do people in this town spend on any physical activity each week? Not only did we reduce bias in how we decide who to survey, but also in how we ask a question. The second criteria for a representative sample is to reduce bias and consider perspectives. All right, I'm going to go collect some data now. Be right back. I just surveyed 30 random people at different locations in the mall, ensuring that my sample proportionally reflects the population of the town. Here are my results. There are two main types of reasoning that we can use to analyze the data. The first type of reasoning is a valid claim, which is a statement that's supported by evidence from the data. An example of a valid claim would be that 4 people from our sample spend 0.5 hours on physical activity each week. The second type of reasoning is an inference, which is a conclusion that is based on evidence but goes beyond what the data directly says. An example of an inference would be that since only 8 out of 30 total people from the sample spend more than 5 hours on physical activity each week, I'll infer that most of the people in town are too busy for physical activity. Remember, a valid claim is completely based on evidence, while an inference takes it one step further into a conclusion. And inferences can be completely wrong. While it is a fact that 8 out of 30 people from the sample spend 5+ hours on physical activity each week, does this mean, for a fact, that most people in town must be too busy for physical activity? Not at all. There are many other possible reasons. Take a look at these two statements. Which is a valid claim and which is an inference? Pause now to answer. The person who spends 10 hours on physical activity per week has a physically demanding job. Is this completely based on evidence? Not quite. Why not? While we know that there is a person who spends 10 hours on physical activity, we don't know for certain if they have a physically demanding job. So this is an inference. 20 out of 30 total people from the survey spend 4 hours or less on physical activity per week. Is this completely based on evidence? Yes. Why? The statement is a fact coming directly from the data gathered. There are no conclusions or inferences being made, so this is a valid claim. Whew, we accomplished a lot today. We identified our population and learned how to choose a representative sample at its criteria. This led us to learning about how bias and perspective impact data. Finally, we collected the data and distinguished between valid claims and inferences. In our next lesson, we'll organize data into frequency tables and dot plots. Exciting. I'll see you next time.